I remember the exact moment everything changed. Not the day, not the time, but the feeling. That strange, heavy feeling in the air. The kind that makes everything around you feel wrong. It wasn't loud. There were no alarms. No shouting. No sudden chaos. At least, not at first. It started quietly. Too quietly. The kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels like a warning. Like something is about to happen. And you just don't know what yet. I was inside at the time, taking a short break from work. Nothing unusual. Just a normal day. Hot, dry still. The kind of day where even the wind feels tired. I remember sitting there, barely thinking about anything, when something caught my attention. Not a sound. A feeling. Something in the air had changed. And then I saw it. Smoke. Thin at first. Almost easy to ignore. Rising slowly in the distance. If you didn't pay attention, you'd miss it. And honestly, that's exactly what I almost did. Out here, smoke isn't unusual. People burn things all the time. Dry leaves. Trash. Leftover crops. It's part of life. Part of the routine. So at first, I didn't react. I just looked at it. Calm. Unbothered. Thinking it was nothing. But then, I noticed something. Something small. But important. The direction. The smoke wasn't far away. It wasn't coming from the road. It wasn't coming from another farm. It was coming from my side. From my land. And that's when my body reacted before my mind did. I stood up. Slow at first. Then faster. And then, that smell hit me. Sweet. Thick. Heavy. Almost sticky in the air. It wasn't the smell of trash. It wasn't the smell of dry grass. It was something else. Something I knew. Something I recognized instantly. Burnt sugar. And the moment that realization hit, my heart dropped. Hard. Because there was only one place that smell could come from. Only one thing on my land that could smell like that when it burns. My sugarcane field. For a second, I just stood there, frozen, like my brain refused to catch up with what my senses already knew. No, I remember saying it out loud, quietly, almost like I was trying to convince myself it wasn't true. But deep down, I already knew. And then I ran. Not walked, not hurried. I ran, as fast as I could, my boots hitting the ground harder than usual, my breathing getting heavier with every step, the distance suddenly feeling longer than it ever had before. And as I got closer, everything got worse. The smoke wasn't thin anymore. It was thick, dark, heavy in the sky, the kind that blocks sunlight, the kind that makes it hard to breathe. The air changed too. It got hotter, not just warm, hot, like opening an oven door straight into your face. And then, I saw it. Flames. Not small ones. Not something you could step on and put out. No, these were big, aggressive, uncontrolled, rising high and moving fast, tearing through my sugarcane field like it was nothing, like all those long rows I planted. Didn't matter. Each row catching fire one after another, like dominoes, falling, disappearing. I could hear it too, that crackling sound, sharp, constant, hungry, like the fire was alive. Years of work, gone, just like that. Every early morning, every late night, every drop of sweat I put into that land, burning in front of me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. But even in that moment, even with everything burning, something didn't feel right. Something about the fire didn't make sense. Because fires like that don't just start randomly, not in the middle of the day, not without a reason. And then I noticed something small, but important. Where it started, the flames weren't spreading outward from the center of my field. They weren't random. They were coming from one direction, from the edge, near the fence, the same fence that separated my land from the HOA neighborhood. And that's when a different kind of feeling hit me. Not panic, not fear, suspicion, because that fence had been the center of problems for months. Now, to really understand what happened that day, you need to understand everything that came before it, because this didn't start with fire. It started with people. I bought this land years ago, back when nobody wanted it. It wasn't valuable. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't easy to work with. The soil was rough, dry, uneven, some parts barely usable. Most people looked at it and saw nothing. A waste. But I didn't. I saw something else. Potential. Not instant success. Not easy profit. But something that could grow. Something that could become more. With time. With effort. With patience. And that's all I needed. I wasn't trying to build something impressive. I wasn't trying to show off. I didn't care about attention. I just wanted something real. Something that belonged to me. Something I could build with my own hands. And that's exactly what I did. Day by day, step by step. I worked that land. Through heat that made your skin burn. Through dust that stuck to everything. Through exhaustion that followed you home. There were days I questioned it. Days it felt impossible. Days nothing seemed to improve. But I kept going. And slowly, things started to change. The soil improved. The crops started growing stronger, healthier, more consistent. And over time, that empty, forgotten land turned into something alive. A sugarcane field. Tall, green, strong, moving gently with the wind. It wasn't just a farm. It was proof. Proof that hard work matters. Proof that patience pays off. Proof that something broken can be rebuilt. And for a long time, that was enough. Life was simple, peaceful, quiet. Mornings started early. Work filled the day. And nights were calm. No noise. No drama. No problems. And honestly, that's exactly how I liked it. But peace doesn't last forever. Because one day, everything started changing. It began with noise. Distant at first. Barely noticeable. Machines. Engines. Metal hitting metal. I didn't pay much attention to it. At first. But over time, that noise got closer. Louder. More constant. And then I saw it. Construction. The empty land next to mine wasn't empty anymore. It was being developed. And slowly, that quiet space turned into something completely different. A neighborhood. Clean. Organized. Planned. Big houses. Perfect lawns. Fresh paint. Neat sidewalks. Everything looked controlled. Everything looked managed. Everything looked the opposite of my farm. And right in the center of it all was something I didn't think much about at first. An HOA. At first, I thought it wouldn't affect me. They had their rules, their systems, their expectations. But that was their world, not mine. I had my land, my work, my life. Separate, simple. Or at least, that's what I thought. Until the first letter arrived. And that's when everything slowly started to change. After that first confrontation, things didn't calm down. They didn't settle. They didn't fade away like I hoped they would. They got worse. Much worse. At first, it was small things. Little annoyances. Things you could ignore. Things you could brush off and move on from. But over time, those small things started piling up. Stacking. Growing. Turning into something bigger. Something constant. Karen didn't just complain. She didn't just voice concerns. No. She made it personal. She made it her mission. Every single week, there was something new. A new issue. A new accusation. A new complaint. Sometimes it was about smell. Sometimes it was about noise. Sometimes it didn't even make sense. But it never stopped. And then, the inspectors started showing up. The first time, I didn't think much of it. A routine check. Normal. Part of running a farm. But then it happened again. And again. And again. Different people. Same questions. Same looks. Same process. At some point, I stopped counting. But here's the thing. Every single time, I passed. No violations. No warnings. No issues. Because I wasn't doing anything wrong. Everything on my land was legal. Safe. Standard farming practice. I followed the rules. I respected the land. I maintained everything properly. There was nothing for them to find. But that didn't stop her. Because Karen didn't care about facts. She didn't care about truth. She didn't even care about the outcome. She cared about control. She wanted things her way. And anything that didn't fit into her version of perfect was a problem. And my farm, it didn't fit. I started noticing her more often after that. Standing near the fence. Watching. Always watching. Sometimes with her arms crossed. Sometimes with her phone out. Taking pictures. Recording. Like she was collecting evidence for something that didn't exist. Other times, she wasn't alone. She'd bring neighbors with her. Pointing at my land. Talking. Explaining. Convincing. I couldn't hear everything. But I heard enough. This place is dangerous. It doesn't belong here. What if something happens? And then one day, I heard something that stuck with me. Something that, at the time, I didn't take seriously enough. What if it catches fire? I remember that moment clearly. Because I almost laughed. A fire? From my farm? Unlikely. I wasn't careless. I didn't take risks. I knew what I was doing. I had fire breaks. I kept things maintained. I monitored conditions. There was no real danger. At least, that's what I believed. But I didn't realize something important back then. Something I should have seen. Something that, looking back, feels obvious. The danger wasn't the farm. The danger was her. And then came that day. The day everything changed. It started like any other. Hot, dry, still. The kind of heat that makes everything feel slower, heavier. The air felt thick, like it was just sitting there, not moving, not breathing. Even the wind was quiet, just a light breeze, barely noticeable, but enough. Enough to carry something, enough to spread something. I remember waking up that morning and thinking, this is one of those days. The kind of day where you take extra care. The kind of day where small mistakes can turn into big problems. So I did what I always do. I checked everything, walked the land, made sure everything was in order. And there was nothing wrong, nothing out of place, nothing unusual. Everything was exactly how it should be. By midday, the heat got stronger. The kind of heat that drains your energy, makes you slow down, makes you take breaks. So that's what I did. I stepped inside, just for a few minutes, to cool down, to rest, to breathe. Nothing unusual, nothing different. And then, I saw the smoke. At first, it didn't register. Just a thin line in the distance, almost easy to ignore. But something about it didn't feel right. And then, that smell. Sweet, heavy, burnt sugar. And everything inside me dropped. By the time I got outside, the situation had already changed. This wasn't a small fire. It wasn't something starting. It was already spreading. Fast. Too fast. And when I reached the field, I saw it. Flames moving across the rows like waves. Aggressive. Uncontrolled. And then, I saw her. Karen. Standing near the fence. Exactly where the fire started. She wasn't running. She wasn't calling for help. She wasn't even surprised. She was just standing there, watching. That moment, everything became clear. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. And then she spoke. Quiet at first, almost to herself, but loud enough for me to hear. This wasn't supposed to get this big. Those words, they confirmed everything. But there was no time to react, no time to argue, no time to process what I just heard. Because the fire was out of control. Sugarcane burns fast, faster than most people realize. It's dry, it's dense, and once it catches, it doesn't stop. The flames moved like waves, jumping from one row to the next, growing, spreading, feeding on everything in their path. The sound alone was overwhelming, crackling, snapping, roaring, like the field itself was collapsing. I tried to move closer, tried to think, tried to do something, but there was nothing I could do. The fire had already taken over. And then, the wind shifted. Just slightly, but enough. The direction changed. And suddenly, the fire wasn't just moving across my land anymore. It was moving forward. Toward the neighborhood. Toward the houses. Toward the power lines. And that's when everything changed again. Karen's expression. It shifted. From confidence, to confusion, to fear. Real fear. No, no, no. She started backing away, her voice shaking, her steps uneven. This isn't right. But it was already happening. The flames reached the edge, climbing higher, reaching further. And then, they touched the poles. For a moment, everything slowed down. You could hear it, that sharp crackling sound. Wood reacting to heat, wires reacting to fire. Then, a loud snap, a burst of sparks, a flash of light. And then, silence. Not complete silence, but the kind of silence that feels heavy. Because suddenly, everything powered by electricity was gone. Lights, air conditioning, screens, noise, all of it, gone in an instant. And just like that, the entire neighborhood went dark. When the power went out, everything changed instantly. 1 second, the neighborhood looked normal, calm, quiet, controlled. And the next, it wasn't. Doors started opening, one after another. People stepping outside, looking around, confused, disoriented. Some holding their phones, some shielding their eyes from the smoke, some just standing there, trying to understand what just happened. Voices filled the air. What happened? Why is everything off? Is that smoke? Is that a fire? Panic spreads fast, faster than flames sometimes. And you could feel it building. People pointing toward my land, toward the fire, toward the rising smoke that now covered part of the sky. Some started walking closer. Others stayed back. But everyone was watching. And in that moment, the perfect, controlled, quiet neighborhood didn't feel so perfect anymore. Then came the sirens. Distant at first. Then louder, closer, faster. Fire trucks, emergency vehicles, first responders rushing in from every direction. Lights flashing, engines roaring, voices shouting instructions. Everything that had been silent moments ago was now loud, chaotic, uncontrolled. Firefighters jumped into action immediately, pulling hoses, coordinating movements, assessing the spread. Water hit the flames. But the fire didn't go out easily. Because fires like that don't stop just because you want them to. They resist. They fight. They consume everything until there's nothing left. And by the time they started gaining control, the damage was already done. I stood there, a few steps back, watching everything. Not moving, not speaking, just watching. My field was gone. Completely gone. All those rows of sugarcane that once stood tall, now reduced to blackened ground. Ash floating in the air, drifting slowly, landing everywhere. The smell of smoke still thick, still heavy, still real. Years of work, years of effort, years of patience. Gone. Not damaged, not partially destroyed. Gone. And the strangest part? Everything felt quiet again. Not outside. Outside was chaos. Sirens. Voices. Movement. But inside me, there was silence. The kind of silence that comes when something is too big to process. Too heavy to react to. I wasn't angry. Not yet. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't blaming. I was just there, looking at what was left. But the story didn't end there. Because something else was happening at the same time. Something I didn't fully notice at first. People were recording. Phones were out. Cameras were on. Not just in that moment, but before it too. Because in today's world, someone is always watching. Someone is always recording. And this time, that changed everything. Later that evening, after the fire was finally under control, after the smoke started clearing, after the chaos began to settle, that's when the truth started coming out. At first, it was just one video. A neighbor's security camera. It showed the fence line, the exact area where the fire started. And then, her, Karen, walking into frame, looking around, making sure no one was watching, holding something in her hand. Something small, but dangerous. She moved closer to the fence, paused for a second, and then, she lit it. A small flame at first, barely visible, but enough. Enough to start everything. She dropped it, stepped back, watched for a moment, and then turned to leave. But she didn't run. She didn't panic. Because in her mind, this was controlled. This was planned. This was supposed to be small. But it wasn't. And that video was just the beginning. More footage started appearing. Another angle. Another house. Another camera. Each one showing more. More detail. More proof. Different perspectives of the same moment. And when you put it all together, there was no doubt. No confusion. No misunderstanding. Just truth. The footage spread quickly. From neighbor to neighbor. From phone to phone. From conversation to conversation. People started talking, comparing, realizing. And suddenly, everything changed. The same person who had been making complaints. The same person who had been pointing fingers. The same person who had been calling my farm dangerous. Was now the reason the entire neighborhood lost power. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. And it didn't take long for authorities to get involved. They had to. Because this wasn't a small situation anymore. This wasn't just about a farm. This was about damage. Real damage. My land. The crops. The infrastructure. But also, the neighborhood. Power lines. Public safety. Risk to homes. Risk to lives. This had become something serious. Very serious. Investigators showed up. They asked questions. Lots of questions. They spoke to me. They spoke to neighbors. They reviewed footage. Collected evidence. And the more they looked, the clearer it became. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't negligence. This was intentional. And that changed everything. Karen was no longer in control of the situation. For the first time, she was the one being questioned, the one being watched, the one being held responsible. I saw her once during all of this, standing outside her house, looking different. Not confident, not in control, just quiet. The same way my field had been after the fire. Quiet. The consequences came quickly after that. Legal trouble, fines, investigations, and more than anything, loss. Not just financial loss, but something deeper. Her reputation, the image she had built, the control she tried to maintain, the influence she thought she had. All of it, gone. Because actions have consequences. And sometimes, those consequences don't just affect others. They come back, stronger. The same neighbors she once convinced now looked at her differently. Not with agreement, not with respect, but with disappointment. And me? I went back to my land. Or what was left of it. Ash. Blackened soil. The air still carrying the faint smell of smoke. I walked through it slowly, step by step. Each step reminding me of what used to be there. Where rows once stood. Where crops once grew. Where life once moved. Now there was nothing. And for a moment, I just stood there, letting it sink in, letting the reality settle. But then, something unexpected happened. People started showing up. Neighbors. Some I recognized. Some I didn't. Some from the HOA. Some who had believed her. Some who had stayed silent. They came one by one. Not to complain. Not to argue. But to apologize. We didn't know. We're sorry. We should have listened. And for the first time since all of this started, I saw something different. Understanding. Not judgment. Not assumptions. Just understanding. Some of them didn't stop at words. They offered help. Real help. Tools. Time. Effort. And slowly, piece by piece, I started rebuilding. Not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. Because that land was still mine. And what I built once, I could build again. It took time. Long days. Hard work. Patience. Just like before. But this time, something was different. I wasn't alone. And the people around me finally understood something important. Farms aren't the problem. Hard work isn't the problem. The real problem is arrogance, control, and the belief that you can destroy something without consequences. Because sometimes, it takes losing everything for people to finally see the truth. Karen tried to destroy my field. But in the end, she destroyed her own world. Not because of bad luck. Not because of circumstances. But because of one decision. One moment. One spark.